Hi, fifth graders, and welcome back to another homework help video. Today we are working on Unit 3, Module 2, Session 7, otherwise known as pages 51 and 52. All right, so we're going to start with some rounding. I'm going to do, I'll do A for each one, just to show you how to round to the nearest whole number, the nearest tenth, and the nearest hundredth. You might want another sheet of paper if you cannot visualize a number line the best, and so just writing down those number lines may be helpful for you. I'm going to do all of my number lines on this blue bar, okay? Again, I'm going to do A for each one. If you need to pause the video to get a sheet of paper out, go ahead and do so. All right, so starting with 1A, we need to round this to the nearest whole number. Now, remember when it says whole number, typically we'll be working with our ones place unless it's going to affect the tens place as well. So in number 1, we have 9.7 is the number that we're rounding. Okay, so drawing my number line, I have to think about what two whole numbers am I between. My low side is always going to be the digit that I already have. So I have 9, and then the next whole number would be 10. So first step is getting your low side and your high side. So again, the two numbers that I am between, if I'm rounding 9 and 7/10 to the nearest whole number, I am between 9 and 10. So step 1, getting the numbers that I'm between. Step 2, I'm going to want to get my halfway point. So halfway between 9 and 10 would be 9.5, also written as 9 5/10. So step 2, getting that halfway point. So then what I need to do is place 9 7/10 on this number line. And I'm going to use the halfway mark to help me. So if 9.5, 9.5 is in the middle, and I have 9.7, I know that 7 is greater than 5, so I'm going to be closer to this side, about right there. Okay, and then I would have like 9.8, 9.9, and then there's 10. So since 9 7/10 is over here, the whole number that it is closer to is 10. There is a greater distance between 9 and 9 7/10 than there is with 9 7/10 and 10. So since it's a shorter distance from 9 7/10 to 10, I'm going to round up to 10. Okay, moving on to number 2. There's my eraser. I wonder why it's not erasing. There it goes. Okay, so now I need to round the decimal to the nearest tenth, and I have 1 65/100. So my number that's in the tenths place value is 6. So I'm going to draw my number line. Okay, and I need to see what two numbers am I between. So since I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, I'm going to be between 1 6/10 and 1 7/10. Remember, I can always put a 0 on the end of that. Remember that our low side is always going to be that digit that we're already trying to round. So there's my 1 6/10, and then one more would be 1 7/10. So then I need to think about, okay, well, what's halfway between 1 6/10 and 1 7/10? That would be 1 65/100. Well, that's the number that we're already trying to round. If we are halfway, we are actually going to round up. So the nearest tenth would be 1 and 7/10. If you're a little bit confused on why I have 1 and 70 hundredths, I want to remind you that 1 and 7/10 is equivalent to 1 and 70 hundredths. They're both equivalent to 1 and 700 thousandths. I could keep on adding those zeros, they're equivalent. All right. Looking at number 3, it says round each decimal to the nearest hundredth now. So I'm working with 351 thousandths. I need to round it to the nearest hundredth. Okay? The number that's in the hundredths place value is that 5. So that means that I'm between 35 hundredths and 36 hundredths. I'm going to add that 0. So then I have to think about again, well, what's halfway between 35 hundredths and 36 hundredths? I'm going to have 355 thousandths. That 5 is always going to be your halfway point. Okay, so then I have to place 351 thousandths on this number line. So I notice that 1 is less than 5, and it's also greater than 0. So my number is going to fall right around here. So again, noticing how the difference from my nearest hundredth is farther than that one. So the number that we would round to is 35 hundredths. So possibly trying to at least think about where these numbers would show up on a number line, or drawing out your number lines if that's what you need to do. I know in 3rd grade that they often will tell you like 1 through 4, stay on the floor. 5 through 9 is when you increase. I'm not sure of the rhyme. So for example, if we look at 9 and 7/10 again, I'm going to use my tenths to round this number. 7 tells 9 to round up to 10. Same thing for the next one. This is what you're used to. If I have 1 and 65 hundredths and I'm rounding to the nearest tenth, here's my tenth, and 5 is going to tell that 6 to go up. And then on the last one, with that 351 thousandths, I'm rounding to the nearest hundredth. 1 is going to tell 5 to stay the same. All right, I got to quickly get through the rest of this video. Okay. Oops. I just want this to go away. Sorry. All right, number 4 says find the sum or difference. If you want to, it's already stacked for you. If you're someone who likes to carry, go ahead and do that. I want to remind you of one of the strategies that we've done in class, which is the give and take strategy. So for example, I could take away 2 hundredths from this and give it to the other one. I should have wrote it on the other side, sorry. So that would make this 8 and 51 hundredths plus 2 and 50 hundredths, possibly being a little bit more easier to add. Another strategy we've talked about in class is using a number line to help us. So if we're starting at 8 and 53 hundredths, we might want to get to the nearest tenth. So to get to the nearest tenth, I would add 7 hundredths, and that gets me 8 and 6/10. So then I could add 4 tenths. That would get me to 9. Add that 100th. So then I have 9 and 100th. Should have made my number line a little bit longer. And then I can add those 2 wholes. get 11 and 100th. And when I add up these jumps, 7 and 700ths plus 100 gets me that 800ths plus 4/10 plus 2 wholes. This adds up to the 2 and 4800ths. So that's another strategy that we've learned in class. Same thing is going on here. So finding the sum or difference using either the give and take strategy or using our jumps in this way by getting to the nearest tenth, nearest hundredth. That's what I did here. Looking at the back, it says show your thinking and label your units. Please do not forget to do that. So looking at number 6, it says a teacher wants to spend no more than $10 to buy new supplies. They want to buy a set of notebooks that costs $6.79. So the units that we are working with in number 6 is money. Will they have enough money left over to buy new pens for $3.50? So they're starting with that $10, and they want to buy something that cost $6.79. So once they spend this amount of money for the notebooks, do they have enough for new pens? So do they have more or less than $3.50? In your answer, you should either write yes or no. Do not forget to do that after getting your answer. So thinking about what this equation would look like if I have $10 and I'm spending a certain amount of money. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Looking at number 7, it says Diego counted $3 bills, 3 quarters, 1 dime, and 7 pennies. Sam counted out $2 bills, 5 quarters, 6 dimes, and 9 pennies. It says who counted more money, how much more. Don't forget that a dollar bill is worth $1. Each quarter is worth 25 cents. Each dime is worth 10 cents. And each penny is worth 1 cent. So if I were you, I would write out Sam and Diego, and I would add up their amounts. And then maybe circle whoever had more. And it says how much more, so we're finding the difference. We work with difference a lot. So you should be able to know what operation you're working with if it's talking about the difference between the two. And then it says how much money did the boys count in all. So if we want to know how much that they both had combined, thinking about what operation, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, what operation would you do to figure out how much they had together? But first, before you guys do anything, I would figure out how much money Diego has and how much money Sam has. I would not just go ahead and add these together. I wrote that to help you know that a dollar bill is worth $1, or just one whole. Quarters are 25 cents. This is just to help you. Dimes are worth 10 cents, and pennies are worth 1 cent. So think about it. If Diego had $3, what do you have to add? On top of that, he had 3 quarters, and he had 1 dime and 7 pennies. So figure out the amounts so that you can see who has more, how much did they have in all. All right, Tanya has a box that measures 12 centimeters by 7 centimeters by 19 centimeters. What is the volume of the box? This goes all the way back to our first unit. Remember that when we did volume, we figured out that there's 2 equations to do so, to where we have the base times the height, or we have length times width times height. So it looks like here that they have the length times width times height. So to get the volume, you're going to have to multiply those together. All right. Look at number 9. This is Eric is keeping track of rainwater. On Monday, it rained 1 3/4 inches. On Tuesday, it rained 2 1/8 inches. How much more did it rain on Tuesday than Monday? So we are trying to find a difference between the two. This kind of is a review from our last unit. I'm noticing that we have different denominators. So we're going to have to find a common denominator. Remember, we did that by listing our multiples. From there, if I have, it's 3/4. We got our equivalent fractions. And then we went ahead and did our equation, whether it was adding, subtracting, or whatever it might be. So again, first step, finding a common denominator. That would be step 1. So what's a common denominator or common multiple for 4 and 8? Using that to get your equivalent fractions for both of them. I wrote down the wrong one on the first one, my bad. Should be 3/4. Okay, once you have that equivalent fraction, remember we would circle it, then you go ahead and do your equation with those equivalent fractions. So some review from last unit. All right, I hope you found that helpful. Good luck on your homework, and I'll see you tomorrow.